All right, everybody. Welcome back to the Ancestral Healing Circle. And I hope you had an enjoyable holiday weekend. And I appreciate you all for showing up this evening, right at the end of summer holiday, I guess it is. So I'm glad you're here for the Lineage section of Ancestral, Healing Your Ancestral Lineage for a Luminous Legacy. Gosh, that's a long title. Okay. Now, I'm very curious about how you progressed through looking at your reflection in a mirror over the past, 5 days? Is that what it's been since our last meeting? What was that like for you? Was it hard to do it? I mean, I hear a lot from people that it's a difficult thing for them to do, to just like keep staring at yourself in a mirror, just kind of like it is looking into anybody else's eyes without looking away or feeling uncomfortable. What was it like?
You might have to call out names for people to start.
Well, I'm waiting for a brave soul.
Well, I finally decided that I think there's a lot of wisdom behind that face. It's
Awesome.
been through a lot, and it's come out on the other side, so to speak.
Yeah, you're so right about that, Teresa. Love that.
I found it very hard. It was very difficult, and at first put me into a very depressed state, actually, to where a lot of things came up that I wrote it all down, and just to see what it was that would come up out of just looking at myself, and it was very profound, and it was very hard to digest. And I'm not sure I can say that 5 days was enough time to look at myself and be comfortable with myself.
Yeah.
Probably need to reiterate that for a while more. But as time goes on, I look at my little notes and my writing, and I see a more positive and a better outcome. Like in the end, I say to see some love. I see love for animals, plants, the earth, love for innocence, love for the abused and forgotten, love for the abuser to get us to a better place, love for the universe, love for what made me, and love for who I want to be. And that was kind of, I think, where I'm at right now.
Wow. Yeah, that's awesome.
Can I share one little thing that I think, well, I wrote the paper, burned it, then I wrote you a note, and I think that did me a world of good. I went to the store up here in Stokesdale Saturday by myself, and I like being by myself sometimes, and coming home, it just washed over me, this feeling of just, I'm at peace. I am so much at peace that it brought tears. It was just one of those profound, little small, subtle feelings, but it's strong enough you just really feel it. And I just, on an aside, for weeks I had been seeing dragonflies everywhere. And then it seems like I quit seeing them. And then yesterday I went to Harris Teeter, and there's another dragonfly. And I'm like, which I'd looked it up, and it says you're in for, there's a soon to be transformation that's going to occur. And, well, you think that, dragonflies, whatever. But I came back out of the store and went to get in my car, and the car parked directly opposite me had a little dragonfly ornament hanging from the mirror. So you can't really ignore it when you see it's not just a dragonfly flitting around. It was there in front of me in a car. So it was just like, I think the transformation is happening.
Yeah.
I have been at this for years and years and years.
Well, and it's, and it's meaningful when when we can apply it to ourselves and accept that, because I mean, this is the reason we, do, classes and things like that, because, we're striving for transformation and to, get out or escape from, be liberated from certain ways of, being the way that we have grown to know ourselves over time, and that's kind of like one of the goals of this circle is getting beyond who you know yourself to have been in the past, because it's like when the enemy. I hate to like use that word for it, but when you know what you are, what's behind you, then you can take action, and it's informed action. It's action from the self, and it's no longer reaction, but it's a response. So when we can respond to that medicine that we encounter out in the world, it's just a reminder of what's really going on. So I hope you see more dragonflies. Awesome. Okay, good work, ladies. I love that. Okay, so we're going to access lineage this evening. And exactly what is lineage? Well, ancestral remnants can be found in the structure of your family's evolutionary development, especially if you've incarnated into your family line multiple times. And that's very important and impactful, because most of us, we don't really know if it's true or not. Some of us have a feeling about it, but most of us don't know that it's really real, or that we've got proof of it. So it's just best to assume that you're in this family lineage for a reason. Now, those remnants can be found in your energetic structure, and it's a lot like our genetic code. It's information about health and the history of our ancestors, and it shows us historical things like the Irish potato famine, or diseases like tuberculosis or syphilis. The subtle energy structure holds all that familial mindset, or the psychological tendencies of your tribe. And it's sort of epigenetic, but it's extra epigenetic. So you might have noticed things like suicide or depression, or even traits like looking on the bright side of life tend to run in families. But have you, well, an interesting thing is when you catch yourself saying the exact same words that your parents said to you 20 or 40 years ago, when you say those words to your own children, there's, a lot of times those are words that you vowed you would never say, or behaviors that you would never do. So some of those behavioral bents are physically caused by chemical imbalances, and they can be treated with drugs, or they can be supported with different therapies, like things like hypothyroidism definitely runs in families, and other problems that are genetically based. So that's some of the lineage you receive, but it's equally important to address the freaking energetic climate of this heritage, because your lineage is just that. It's your heritage. So one way to think about them is like subtle ghosts in the machine of the human energy structure. They're subtle, and they're often undetectable energies that can influence life in incredibly powerful ways. And not just a little. They can actually energize your life. They can drive you, maybe not in the ways that you're thinking. Now, if you've inherited an autoimmune condition that your great-grandmother had. It can actually force you to become an expert on autoimmune disease, for example, and you'll start searching out all the incredibly interesting and intricate ways that you can treat something like that. So it can be a gift in a lot of ways for people. But this is only one of the ways I've heard people talk about their genetic conditions. And for some people, when they're experiencing an active, ghost in their cell machine, they're totally blind to why they're reacting in a certain way to people's behaviors or acting certain ways in particular situations. So there are many, many presentations of this. Okay, here are some examples of the way that ghosts appear in your subtle machine. Okay, it's responses like always having to find your own way to do things and not liking strict instructions. Or if you have to take instructions, you kind of follow them in a half-assed way. And also insisting on being right, even if you know you're wrong. So you might think, does that remind you of someone in your family? Blaming others or blaming the person who's not there is also a common one. You're blaming the mother, blaming the brother or the sister or the teacher, or blaming bad instructions, for example, or even blaming your own shortcomings or your difficulties. So you're going to hear these next ones, and they're going to resonate with you. They're family statements, family behaviors, things that have been passed down. So here's another one. Needing to address your feelings. And that's like putting a damper on the whole room at the expense of others. It's like how many dinners have been ruined in that way. Flying off the handle and getting mad very easily by very slight provocations. It's like being on a hair trigger and having only one real anger response. It's like going from irritated to infuriated in like 5 seconds. Okay, here's another one. Eating until you're overfull and overstuffing yourself, or not eating when you're hungry. It's like putting off nourishing yourself and ignoring your physical feedback. And this is so that you have some sense of control. Now, all those are lineage responses. Here's another one. Never complaining when your body hurts. And to the point of being incapacitated or even disabled because you didn't treat an illness or an injury or a condition or a chronic situation. My dad's like that. Another one is what has been called the organ recital. So you want to think about this happens when you're older, probably. Have you ever been to a dinner at someone's house, or you've just gone over to visit someone, and all that can be talked about is yours or their health? It's like you go down this list of like talking about all the things that are wrong with you. All right. Another good one is not sharing your emotions. It's like locking them down, not feeling them because it's what you're supposed to do. Or sometimes for women particularly, you don't allow your emotions to cloud a situation. That's another lineage. So there are many of these types of issues that can have psychological causes. I'm not arguing that point. The difference here is the persistent nature of the behavior in your life. So usually these don't get resolved through psychotherapy, no matter how good the work or dedicated or how committed the client or the therapist are. They're still going to sort of continue. You can sort of dial them down, but they're still there. They're underneath. And it's almost like they become a subtext in your life. So as a result, you just kind of deal with it by saying, that's just who I am. But the truth is, the root is buried deep. It goes back too far. And we usually just decide to do what we know how to do, which is simply to react. But the question is not so much why do you do it in this situation, but how can you stop doing something that's so ingrained, something that's really energetic? So ghosts like this manifested to help us survive. These are the lineages of your ancestors, and this is how they have come into your life, and we keep them alive and real. This is how they've given the gift of their knowledge to their descendants, and this has worked for tens of thousands of years, and human beings have done this and done this and done this. And we all have this overlay of thousands of ancestors in our subtle structure. So just think about that. Some are far more influential than others. Some grandmother or grandfather, some are more negative in their impact, and some are more significant in their positive aspect. So we're the amalgamation of billions of energies and spontaneous shifts that have happened in the subtle body to shape each of us and affect who we become. So every one of our ancestors is useful, and each one holds a huge set of experiences and impressions, no matter how long or short their lives were. Every one of them has left an impression on you. Not every single thing remains in you from every single ancestor. What remains for you are the bits and pieces of your tribe that were considered important by your early conditioning and the choices that you've made and shaped and directed your focus for this life. And usually we never even notice those parts of our makeup. We consider them positive attributes or certain kinds of brilliance. But it's possible for all those ancestral traits to negatively influence us, and that's where we really want to look. It's all wonderful to have all of these positive traits that we can access, but that's not what tends to hold us back from growing. So some of us know about our family's dark secrets, like a child born out of wedlock, a rape, the family incest, a great uncle who shot himself in the attic. I even heard about a grandmother who tried to kill her 8th child because she couldn't face another diaper. And it sounded a lot like postpartum depression, but it did create an imprint. So here's some more lineage pieces. Surviving famine or long ship crossing, imprisonment, torture, or poverty. That trauma survives down through the generations. And in more than just the family history, they remain in the energetic signatures and the events that are stored epigenetically in the DNA. Now, these traumas from the far distant past are alive inside of us, and those are the ones that impact us most strongly. So the Irish family that really experienced famine for generations, not just one generation. The potato famine was extreme, but there have been famines for thousands of years. Same thing with American Indian heritage, Native Americans. Many famines. It goes on and on like that. And the trauma is still living. So that feeling that you'll never have enough, it might not be psychological. Now, why do they do it? Why do our ancestors do this? Well, one reason is for some of them, maybe it was happening for thousands of years, but they want to warn their children, their descendants, about the possibility of starvation and to share with us their will, their stamina, and the force of character we might need to survive such a thing. They want the line to survive. Now, often a leader in your family tribe had the most powerful experiences. So often these powerful experiences influence your opinions, your behaviors, and decisions for good. And those are beneficial. So you don't want to remove that, right? You want to keep that. These are the imprints from our ancestral benefactors, and we want to keep those gifts. Now, all the stuff that's unexplained and unresolved come from those ancestral ghosts, and they can make our futures both certain and uncertain. They lock in certain things, and other things, they're kind of mysterious. They create a kind of bond within the genetic family history that can comfort as well as destroy. So if you come from, let's say, for example, you come from a pioneer that took covered wagons across the country all the way to the Rocky Mountains, and there's a certain kind of courage or determination and family intensity. So this is the kind of bond that's carried in the subtle version of our DNA, and it's part of the subtle anatomy called the subtle light matrix. Removal of those negative or at least less helpful imprints involves defining the issue. All right. Now, understanding the historical context through doing some family research, looking at your own family story is what gets us there. And I don't mean going to the default setting of maybe making up an explanation like, oh, it must have been this, or getting a psychic reading. Don't do that. I don't want you to rob yourself of the investigation or the research. To release this epigenetically stored information, you got to do this work personally. It's not going to help to have someone else do it for you. Knowing it is one thing. Uncovering it is something completely different. So build your own historical reconstruction. Look at your family members and look at as many of the effects as you can find, one upon the next, through the generations. This is what you're going to be working on for Wednesday when we meet. And I can almost hear somebody in there saying, but I don't know who my grandmother was. That's okay. In those situations where we don't have genealogy or we can't find any historical proof or evidence, or maybe all the relatives are dead and gone, but go back as far as you can and work with what you have. I want you to be like really clinical in your research. And if you're looking into situations of adoption or abandonment, start there and track through the lives and look for occurrences of adopting behaviors or abandoning your inner truth. All right, so those are a couple of hints how to go through this. You can trust these patterns that go back through the ages. You can trust that they belong to your subtle ghosts and your machine. So that's really all I have for this evening. That's it for part 1 of Legacy. But be sure to start your research as soon as possible. and be ready for when we meet again on Wednesday evening for part 2 of Legacy. And remember that I check in frequently with our private Facebook group, so let all your questions and comments land there. And of course, if you can email me as well with your questions and comments. I always love to hear from them. All right.